Hey everybody, welcome to this session, a practical guide to cloud native solutions, demonstrating ROI and business impact. My name is Simon Forster. I'm a technical architect. I do contracting work here in the City of London, usually in financial services, and I'm also a CNCF ambassador.
And I'm Danielle Cook. I'm also a CNCF ambassador, and both Simon and I run a working group within the CNCF that focuses on, it's called the Cartographis Working Group, and we've created the Cloud Native Maturity Model. We've written about kind of the business outcomes as well as the technical outcomes and the people and culture and all that it takes to achieve cloud native maturity. So, kicking off, we want to start with the cloud native investment dilemma. Actually, I'm going to take a step back. Quick show of hands, how many of you think of yourself as working on the business side of an organization? Okay, not a lot. And how many view yourself as a technical person in the organization? Okay. So we want everybody to view themselves as being on the business side, because that is what we're going to talk a lot about. The other question is, how many of you own or are responsible for budget, or a budget holder, you have resources? Okay, cool, all right. So you are here, you're at KubeCon, you're talking about cloud native, you're deciding whether you want to invest in this open source product, spend time on this, that, whatnot. There's a lot of challenges you're gonna face, and that's, first of all, the financial uncertainty. So are you going to save money? Are you going to be increasing costs? And you're going to have to justify that. And we, in the Cloud Native Maturity Model, talk a lot about how you get to a point of the messy middle where you are spending more money and not actually reducing costs, and that's messy. You're also going to be going through this transition shift of budget, so you're going to be moving from CapEx to OpEx. What does that look like? How do you explain that to an organization that might have, been buying their data center and their servers and having that physical infrastructure? There's also the timeline concern. So ROI isn't immediate when you go and make this transition, and you need to demonstrate that. That's what we're going to be talking about. There's also the over-engineering side. Are you building something that is going to be way more complex than what you actually need? Can you just quickly buy EKS, AKS, right, and deploy? Or, are you building something that is really going to differentiate your business or allow you to? So there's a bunch of challenges you have to go through. So what we're going to do, we really wanted this to be practical. So we are going to give you 3 different kind of examples looking at what you might be building from the business side down. So we're going to be talking about development efficiency, risk reduction, and then financial kind of restructuring, infrastructure modernization. And so we want to first give you a disclaimer. In each one of these examples, all of you will be able to find a hole in it. What we're trying to do is paint a picture of how you should be considering about your business justification, how you should consider ROI. You might be like, that number is way too low, that timeline's way too low. We know that. We accept that as presenters here, but we're just taking you along for the journey. So, the first example we're going to go through is around your churn rate. So, for many of you, you may be like, I'm not really sure, churn rate. Churn rate is, just as a definition, you've spent all this money, you've acquired customers, they're using your apps, but you're losing customers. That is measured in churn rates. Again, we're looking at this from the business level down, and that is what's being reported to your board. They care about that. Anytime you see any stock reports or whatnot, Netflix is always saying, we acquired this many customers, we've lost this many customers, that's losing is your churn rate. So we have a problem at an organization. We have rising churn rates. And that's because we're not delivering the features that our competitors are delivering. So sales is impacted, customer success is impacted, your C-level execs, they're going into the board and they're saying our churn rate's getting really bad. So that is a major problem at this organization. So you have a goal, you have a 10% churn rate today. That's not good. Most people don't want to do that. They want to be less than 5%. So we have a business goal to reduce our churn rate from 10% to 5%. So in order to do that, we have to get features in market. Our competitors are beating us. I'm sure, all of you will at some point of time be really frustrated when a competitor releases something and you're like, oh, we're working on it and we just didn't get it out in time. That's what we're trying to do. So your job on the technical side is you're going to cut the release times from 2 days to 1 day. Now, again, we're trying to use kind of some simple numbers to get thinking through. You might want to kind of change that to hours versus days, but for the sake of this, it's cutting it from 2 days to 1 day. So you have proposed, I'm going to build this lightweight platform. I'm going to use a bunch of open source tools from the CNCF. I'm going to pull it all together, and we're going to be able to accelerate our release time. Now, I say lightweight platform because you're going to see these numbers and be like, and you're like, it's a lightweight platform. I'm going to be able to do this in 6 weeks. In that 6 weeks, I'm also going to enable teams. I'm going to have set up some support for the organization. So now we're going to get into how I justify this to my business leaders. The first is I have to show or consider what revenue is at risk. So if I have, 2,000 customers, I'm spending 2,000 or get 2,000 pounds from them, 4 million ARR. ARR is your annual recurring revenue. Again, these are the things that are being reported to the board. And some of you might be like, yeah, of course I know that, but other people might not have heard that term. So how much revenue I'm getting annually from my customer base. Right now, I have a 10% churn rate. I'm losing 400,000 pounds to customer or to competitors each year. So I want to reduce that to 5%, which means then I'm only losing 100,000 pounds. So life is much better. So I'm going to put an investment into this platform. So again, there's loads of things to consider, but we're trying to get you thinking in terms of this. I have 2 engineers. They understand all of this ecosystem. And so I'm going to take 2 engineers. I'm going to have, I'm paying them about 600 pounds a day. I think it's going to take about 30 days, each one of them working on this. So I'm going to spend 36,000 pounds to do this. I then need to train a bunch of people. So I'm just going to guesstimate that at, 10,000 pounds. There's this person, that person. I got to take them off. I'm going to spend about 46,000 pounds to make this happen. Now, just as a small caveat, and if you've been attending any of the platform engineering day, you definitely want to take your developers along for the ride. You don't want to be like, hey, I've built a platform, by the way, now you have to go use it and train them. So that's our little caveat there. And of course, you're going to have ongoing costs of testing and maintenance, but this is the I've set it up cost. So I've now done this. I've invested, spent 6 weeks. I've trained people. They're using it. Suddenly I am everything's accelerated. I have lowered my churn rate. Yay. I've lowered it to 2% of churn rate. So now I'm actually only losing 40K of ARR. I've reduced my churn by 80%, and the business is happy because I'm able to say to my boss, I built this, and here's the sort of money you're seeing in return, or here's what we're not losing. That loss helps you with retention rates, growth, and now I've set up my platform so that I can expand and grow in the future. So it's an example of how you can be thinking about your technology that maps directly to a business example. So now, Simon, over to you.
So I'm going to talk about risk and disaster and awful things. And I suspect some of you are probably familiar with this little case. CrowdStrike released an update last year, and Delta was one of many companies that were affected by this. Happens to be an airline in the US, and they've forecasted $380 million, just a few pennies, in losses. And then we have another disaster. This one struck here in the United Kingdom. This was a couple of years ago. We have a bank, it's called TSB. They were down for a couple of days. Nobody could pay their mortgage, get paid, or they were left stranded at the checkout. You can imagine how that felt for everybody. So When businesses are out of markets, it's a real problem. They can suffer from reputational damage, they've obviously got lost revenue, and they can end up being fined, as we just saw in that last example. So for a business, sometimes ensuring service reliability can really help us protect revenue, retain customers, and of course, over the long term, uphold our brand trust. That is the aim of our business. We need to be there when our customers need us. And then we've got a business requirement that might be a little more defined. We need 99.95% uptime. You know, I think I can do better. But anyway, that's what we're after. And we need to avoid X thousand or $1 million in lost revenue. So the job that we face as architects and engineers is to build an effective infrastructure that can actually provide service to our customers. So we might say, okay, well, I'm going to take advantage of cloud service providers. I'm going to be multi-region. I'll be HA, and I might go and have asynchronous data replication between regions. I think many of us will be familiar with those diagrams. We've got some blocks in the UK, some in Germany, Finland, maybe Madrid, that type of situation. And the timeline for this, because, hey, we can do it quick in Cloud Native, is I'm going to do it in 6 weeks, and I'm going to enable everybody and do ongoing support. Point is that we can start to do some calculations around this. These are aggressive, they're numbers, but we'll run with them. Now, depending on the size of a company, we'll have different calculations around what that infrastructure might cost for an application. For a small startup, for an application, it might be €7 an hour. For a mid-market institution, it might be, say, €30 an hour, or for an enterprise, if we're looking at €100,000 per month, okay, in costs, that comes out at around €140 per hour. Now, those are pretty dramatic numbers, actually. €100,000 to host my application for a month. Well, if I'm going to be facing, when we look at costs and lost revenue, €7.5 million in lost income and revenue just for an hour of downtime, suddenly those numbers that we need to budget for, that we need to plan for our return on investment, okay, start to look a lot better. So if we go and invest money, as well as dealing with the cost of lost revenue, we also deal with, we don't have brand damage and we don't have regulatory fines. And so I just want to give you a reminder of consequences of this. So when we talk about Delta, for example, it wasn't just Delta that actually lost money from this. It was CrowdStrike. And CrowdStrike also suffered, as well as Delta, from terrible reputation as a result of that. And it's going to take time to rebuild. And then in the case of TSB, not only did they lose revenue, I don't bank there, and I think a lot of people didn't, they also were fined. And those fines, another almost £50 million, really contributes. I'm just going to move on now to another example as well, which is more of an infrastructure modernization example. So we might want to go and free up capital and lower financial risk. So how do we do that? Well, we might want to shift from CapEx to OpEx. Now, these are accounting terms, and as an engineer, the thing that's most important to me is to understand with CapEx, that's when I go and purchase assets for my business. They turn into what's known as a fixed asset on an accountant's ledger, okay? And then they are depreciated over time. That means a pile of servers, some switches, and it might mean other networking equipment and all of the infrastructure required to build on-premise. Now, we've literally turned cash into tin when we do that. And a real compelling argument for a lot of companies is to move more towards OpEx. So as a monthly expense, money goes out the door to pay for the services to support my business. So it's really important from a cash flow and accounting perspective, and that is often a hidden driver for a lot of cloud-native migration and modernization. So our business requirement is to reduce infrastructure costs and accelerate application delivery. Oh, and what I forgot to mention is, if I depreciate those servers over 3 years or 5 years, well, we might be familiar with Moore's Law. I've just ended up at the end of 5 years with a server that just doesn't live up to my requirements. So our job is to go and modernize that legacy infrastructure, okay? Effectively get rid of it, and we're going to adopt cloud native. We're going to go container-based, obviously, because containers rock, and a lot of other stuff. And we're going to do it over 2 to 3 years. So we can use a very basic return on investment calculation for this. We can take something like the final value of our investment, okay, after what we would have spent, and put it over the cost of the investment. So if the cost of my infrastructure, of my platform, is $3 million to start with, and then I can get it down to $2.5 million, but it costs me $1 million to go and make that transformation, then I can easily make, after a couple of years, I can break even, and after 3 years, I've got a 50% return on investment. So if we think through, and it might be the operating costs for our platform and what we're spending, because depreciation is an expense that we pay annually, okay? We can quantify all of this, okay? Then we get a strong motivation. And this really helps sometimes when we're having those questions with those discussions with business owners, like, well, why am I getting these direct costs every month coming through? This helps to answer that question. So the outcome that we're after is that we can modernize our infrastructure to support, obviously, future growth, Moore's Law, and scalability, because I can easily simply request additional resource from my cloud service provider when I need it. I don't have to rack as well. Pleased about that.
I think you're
that's
still
me.
up.
Yeah. So some other considerations as well. So I've talked about CapEx and OpEx, but another driver as well that we can often face is around upcoming deadlines. So we might have a business that says, I want to get rid of that data center. We want to become more lean, we want to become slimmer, more agile. So when we want to go and modernize and work out our business case for cloud, we can often take advantage of those types of deadlines. Do we really want to go and spend $10 million, pounds or euro on a data center lease that we don't need? And then there are application milestones as well. If we think about it, a lot of our vendors that are supplying applications we might be using are themselves going through their cloud native journey. So instead of providing us with, whatever artifacts, we might have container images and a series of Helm charts for deployment, for example. So we also need to take into account the distribution and software lifecycle of our upstream vendors as well. And then other drivers we can take advantage of as well are things like regulatory changes, like the European EU Digital Operation Resilience Act, DORA, also known as DORA, and not to be confused with DORA metrics that you might be aware of as well. So these external constraints and regulations can often drive our migrations as well. And then finally, of course, I've talked about disasters. We all want to reduce risk. We simply want to sleep at night, and we don't want to have to go and make those incident reports.
Awesome. So we've given you some examples. We've hopefully got you thinking a little bit about this, but you leave here and you think, well, where do I start? I learned about all this new technology. I want to try this. I want to do that. So our first recommendation step is to understand your customer. So your customer might be external, they might be internal, they might be, whatever platform you're building for. Who are they? And what are their needs? And what are their goals? Are they trying to save money? Are they trying to deliver items faster? What are the key metrics that they're living by? Is it churn rates? Is it customer acquisition costs? Is it, a profit and loss statement that is very clear? Is it modernization? Is it speed? You need to really understand that. And that's when you start with the, how do I do it? What technology do I need? How do I make it happen? And obviously some of you might already be on your cloud native journey. Some might be new to it, but it's understanding I want to create a business justification for this technology. So how am I going about doing that? Of course, you're a KubeCon, so that's great. Also, there's probably some YAML for that. And, when in doubt, you have this happening. So, key takeaways.
So, you need to understand, as Danielle's outlined, you need to understand your customers. I'm a technologist, I'm an architect, so for me, the walls of my technical organization are really comfortable for me, but it benefits me so much when I reach outside my technical organization and out into my business. And then when I really understand what the customers of my company, my organization are after, that contributes even more. So make sure you reach out. As well as that, know your applications and understand your technical landscape. We have many different applications in large, complex institutions. So become familiar with them and understand the technical landscape.
And know that it's not just a technology decision, it's a business decision. So ask why. Why are we doing this? Ask it a lot. Keep asking it. And start small. So, most people start with, a few projects, smaller POCs, start small and then grow from there. And that's where we would say, the cloud native maturity model really talks about how you can do that. So definitely have a look at that.
Yep. Also take advantage of the platform engineering maturity model. Also a tremendous artifact as well. Start small, iterate.
Yep.
Yep.
And we are going to be working on building some specific ROI modeling so that, hopefully at the next KubeCon, we'll go a level deeper on this. So if you're interested in getting involved, we do have a working group that you can join. It's the Cartographos working group. Simon named it. It rolls off the tongue easily. It's his fault.
It's Greek, like
yeah.
Kubernetes.
Yeah. And then, of course, tell us what you think about the presentation. We love your feedback. We want to make it better. We want to make it as practical as possible. So, yeah.
Yep. We want cloud native in business. Help us.
Yeah.
Thank you.